Brothers and sisters, comrades, please put your hands together for George Galloway and Chief Professor Desmond and also
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Chair, distinguished panel, brothers and sisters, comrades and friends, wassalamu alaikum. Peace be on all of you. Like Abdul, my parliamentary colleague, I'm very proud indeed of the huge attendance here this evening, inside and outside on this bitterly cold evening, and a Saturday evening to boot. There are very few places in the country that could draw this crowd on a Saturday evening for a meeting, and yet I'm not surprised. Not just because I had every confidence in the young people from Respect Youth, who once again have taken an initiative, one that perhaps we older members should have taken ourselves, and had seized the opportunity and organized this, but because I know from very long association with the Muslim community in Britain that the word Palestine, the idea of Palestine, where Lazarus rose, where Jesus walked, where the Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven from the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, is in the heart of every sincere person of the Muslim faith. And I have been, as was said in Shahid's introduction, associated with this cause for most of my life. From the middle 1970s until now, 33 years, I have fought this battle. But I can sadly but honestly say it's one of the battles which so far I have lost. Because actually the position of the Palestinian people when I started this campaign was better than it is now, more than 33 years later. I don't believe that's my fault, and I don't believe that's your fault. And we'll come in a minute to whose fault that might be. But it's scant comfort to the Palestinian people. If all Palestine is in our hearts, it's scant comfort to them in their trial, in this Calvary on which they are being crucified, if it's only on our lips. Action speaks louder than words. And I tell you, Shahid made a Freudian slip in the beginning when he introduced Abdul as the leader of the Tower Hamlets Council. Inshallah, one day he'll be that and more than that. But let's say to the people who are the leaders of Tower Hamlets Council, don't make us wait until Respect has a majority in the Town Council. Win Tower Hamlets with Janine now, without any further delay. That would be action, not words, that would mean something concretely. Not only do we have our young people organizing this meeting, we have them filming it. And this will be on YouTube before many hours have passed. And by the internet, they can repair the cables which have mysteriously been cut almost entirely throughout the Arab and Muslim world. Internet cables that should withstand earthquakes have been cut, 3, 4 of them in the last week. Virtually all of the Arab world is without internet this evening. Iran is completely internet free. I wonder if something is going on. I wonder if they're planning something for the future. But when those cables are repaired, and through the internet wing the messages of this great meeting here today, this audience and this meeting will bring comfort to those cold and hungry, will bring comfort to those occupied, that we at least in Tower Hamlets have not forgotten them and will never forget them. Now, a huge vigil outside Downing Street took place last week. I think it was on Thursday. Thousands of people. Last Saturday, a week ago today.
Thousands of people came from all over the country. As indeed it's remiss of me not to mention, we have two friends in the front row who've come all the way from Dorset for this meeting here tonight. When the vigil was called, we imagined that it would be a funereal atmosphere there. And indeed we were grieving many losses on that vigil. But in fact, the atmosphere, by the time the vigil took place on Saturday, was more one of celebration, more one of a wedding than a funeral. Why? For the reasons that Dr. Dawood Abdullah mentioned. That's why. Because 60 years into this catastrophe, more than 40 years after the occupation of the Gaza Strip, decades into one of the longest serving terms of imprisonment, and an imprisonment of an entire people ever known in human history. The prisoners smashed through the walls of the jail and freed themselves. And this was pregnant with many, many new possibilities. First of all, and decisively, it told the jailers, it told the prison warders, it told their collaborators in the Arab world and in the West that the Palestinian people would never be imprisoned again, because they can repair these walls as they've tried to do and so far failed. They can roll out their barbed wire. They can bring their savage German shepherd dogs, as the Egyptian regime did. The people killed 6 of them, by the way, with their bare hands as they confronted them, as they fought through the walls. They can bring all their weapons, but the Palestinians can break through those walls and those wires anytime they decide to do so, because when 350,000 people decide to move, no power on earth can stop them. I was reminded actually when I saw it of something that the late President Arafat, God rest his soul, told me that Chairman Mao had said to him. Chairman Mao said to Arafat, the Arabs are not serious about recovering Palestine. Why? Disingenuously asked Arafat. Mao said, if all the Arabs walked into Palestine, there's not enough bullets and bombs in the Israeli state to stop them taking it back. What was lacking, what was required, was the political will to do it. Well, the Palestinians showed, just in the last 2 weeks, that they at least have the will, the heart, and the determination to take their future into their own hands. The second important possibility that was opened up by their action was that it portended the downfall of the puppet President Hosni Mubarak and the dictatorship in Egypt, which keeps its own people down and betrays the Palestinian people on a daily basis. Why? Because when Mubarak told his soldiers to fire on the people as they came through the walls, the soldiers refused to do so. And they refused to do so for 2 reasons. First, because many, maybe most, maybe all of the Egyptian soldiers' hearts were with the suffering Palestinians rather than those giving them orders in Washington and Tel Aviv. But even if that were not so, as was proved on the streets of Iran during the Islamic Revolution, soldiers don't have enough bullets in their guns to fire on 350,000 people. They can only fire till their magazine is empty. And then those they didn't kill will tear them limb from limb. This lesson has sunk into the masses and into the armed forces of Egypt, and as I say, portends the doom, the downfall of that dictatorship. But it has a third important possibility. I have all my life, and I have the scars to prove it, supported the armed struggle of the Palestinian resistance, and I will support it until my dying breath. I have always supported the right of the Palestinian people to take up arms against their sea of troubles and by opposing end them. And every liberation movement confronting the enemies that the Palestinians are confronting must have an armed struggle, an iron fist, a hammer with which to strike the enemy and to defend the revolution and the people it represents. But you can only break things with a hammer. But if you add the anvil to the hammer, if you bring an anvil onto the table, then between the hammer and the anvil, bad things can be broken, but beautiful things can be created. And just as we supported the armed struggle of the African National Congress through its military wing Umkhonto and Sizwe as the hammer of the South African people, it was only when the anvil of mass popular resistance, the movement of millions of people boycotting, sitting down, striking, engaging in civil disobedience against their occupier, the apartheid finally fell. And this lesson too has been learned in the last 2 weeks. That when the Palestinian people move en masse, nothing can stop them and no possibility is beyond them. And this lesson has been seen also in Iraq, where another armed struggle is being conducted against the violent foreign occupation of their country, but which will have to be joined by popular struggle amongst the masses of people in their millions before it will finally succeed. Now, I said I'd turn to those whose fault it is that the Palestinians, 60 years after the catastrophe, which wiped their country off the map. Remember, the next time you hear the lie that Ahmadinejad of Iran threatened to wipe Israel off the map. In fact, he did no such thing. In any case, Iran doesn't have the capability to wipe Israel off the map. Although Israel has the capability of wiping Iran off the map. But the only country that's been wiped off the map is not Iran or Israel, but Palestine. Go back to your atlas and look if you don't believe me. 60 years ago, a country disappeared. Its people were scattered to the four winds, to the four corners of the earth, where they've lived lives of misery, hunted from pillar to post, as refugees, as stateless people, without passports, without rights, without any possibility of using the keys that their parents, now grandparents, left with when they left their homes to the foreign settlers who now occupy them. But this is the key. Israel could not alone subjugate millions of Palestinians and take their land on a semi-permanent basis so far. Israel would not be able to afford the cost of their occupation, could not procure the weapons for their occupation, would not be able to sustain this vast enterprise which has lasted so long if it were not carrying out the orders of the United States of America and the other imperialist countries. Every bomb, every bullet, every rocket, every helicopter gunship, every F-16 is paid for by the United States taxpayers, and no one dare raise a voice against it in the United States. Even candidates like Barack Obama, who I hope wins, are being pushed remorselessly day by day into more and more sympathetic positions towards Israel because the politicians there are too weak, too morally vacuous to make a stand for justice in this case. But it's also true here. Dr. Daoud talked about the quartet. He meant the European Union, the United States of America, Russia, and the United Nations. You want to judge the quality of the quartet? Who have they made their special envoy? The blood-stained war criminal, Tony Blair, the British Prime Minister, until a few months ago. That's how serious these people are about justice for the Palestinians. Not since Caligula appointed his horse a proconsul of Rome has a more grotesque appointment been made. It's as if you made Dr. Harold Shipman the honorary president of Help the Aged. This man, who said on March the 20th, 2005 in Parliament, and I quote, "Israel has no better friend in the world than this government. Israel has no better friend," I'm still quoting, he said, "than this Prime Minister," and for once he was telling the truth. New Labour, Brown as well as Blair, two cheeks of the same backside, support every crime Israel commits and are therefore equally guilty of the crimes that Israel commits against the Palestinian people. And so what is to be done? Well, we're still fighting for the twinning between Tower Hamlets and Jenin. We want it now, but if we don't get it now, when the next election comes in Tower Hamlets, if Respect wins the election, the Palestinian flag will fly from the Tower Hamlets culture when we twin between cities together. Secondly, here I'm addressing the Muslims in the audience. Some of you have heard me say this before on my radio show, which competes with my friends, I see, at least on a Saturday night. I don't know if you heard me last night. 3 hours of brutal combat with racism and bigotry. Listen to it on the internet. You'll enjoy it. And listen to them tonight and listen to me on the internet tomorrow.
Change to Sunday.
I've lost my place. Where was I? Yes, I'm addressing the Muslims here. This is the truth. I was going during the holy month of Ramadan. As we moved towards the Eid, I was going around Muslim shops in Tower Hamlets and elsewhere, telling them that although they had collection boxes for the mosque, although they had religious imagery in their shops, although they were selling dates to the faithful people to break their fast, the dates were made in Israel. They were stained with the blood of the Palestinian people, and Muslim shopkeepers were selling them. Let's resolve now that at least in Tower Hamlets, next Ramadan, not a single Israeli date will be sold in any shop in this borough of Tower Hamlets. Let's promise that now over the internet to the Palestinian people. We should be boycotting them as all self-respecting people boycotted apartheid South Africa. We must make it, as it was then, a mark of shame to someone that they were buying the blood-stained products of racism and apartheid. Israel is just as racist. Israel is just as apartheid a state as South Africa ever was, and it must be treated exactly like that. But I have another idea, which struck me when Councillor Abdul was speaking. Let's make a delegation from Tower Hamlets. Let's go to Gaza. Let's bring with us everything that we can. Let's embrace them and promise them that until Palestine is free, until the faithful people can pray in the mosques and the churches of Jerusalem without a military occupation barring their way, until the flag of Palestine flies from the Al-Aqsa and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in occupied Jerusalem, we will be with them every step of the way. Wassalamu alaikum. Thank you very much.